more than what they see.
Yes, I want to ask you, what's kind of method? How can researcher get answer from the social actors? But before that, we should go to the data collection.
Data collection.
Yes. What kind of data collection? I mean, how many data collection and research? Yes.
All right. many kinds of data collection. There's the methodology. There's also the instruments, right? So oftentimes when we talk about data collection, and people tend to relate, understand the instruments, the interviews, the focus group, the survey, the primary data, the secondary data, the observation, participant observation, non-participant observation, the text analysis, right? So these are these are mainly the instruments, right? Or field research, right? These are the instruments. So not to confuse with the methodology, but the methodology itself. So the instruments are often different or can be used in different combination under different methodology, right? But then there's a research strategy, and then there's a methodology,
yes,
and
right.
then there's instruments.
Right. Yes.
So instrument is at the very end.
Yes.
So what happens, if I may take you want some coffee?
No, okay, no, thank you.
There's no sugar though.
Okay.
What happens is many theses, not many, some theses, right? I see people jump straight from what they call quantitative, qualitative, straight to instruments.
Okay.
So I'm doing qualitative, I'm using interview, and then interestingly, and they will talk about some software at the end. Be SPSS, it could be Envivo, it could be Atlas if it's qualitative, right? And there's Systat, which is the older one. You note all these things, but then in the process of higher level research, namely PhD research, we want to see a level of thinking that is higher. That's why it's called PhD. It's philosophy or doctorate, right? Doctorate philosophy, right? It's doctorate philosophy. So the philosophy part is in the research strategy, is in the philosophy, right? So people tend to skip that one, and do not emphasize that one, and sadly, the level of understanding of research is limited because they do not understand that, right? So when we talk about data collection, if we start with research strategy, right? Inductive research, for instance, right? Certainly they cannot run away from collecting, direct collection of data. And direct collection of data, depending what data they're collecting, right? It could be observation, right? It could be from interview, it could be from survey, it could be from
the case.
Case study is an interesting way. We'll get to that. Case study can be many things in it. It could be text analysis, right? These are instruments under inductive research. But before we talk about the instruments itself, I've kind of prepared some slides here about the qualitative research. Certain seven types of qualitative research. But before even I talk about qualitative research, 7 types of qualitative research, we will need to understand that quantitative and qualitative, right, can be done together, can be done separately.
I mean, quantitative, which include the instrument inside the quantitative, and the people would show this is to review can understand. We have quantitative and qualitative. Which kind?
Sorry. Just mute it.
Which include quantitative and which include qualitative inside each one.
All right. There are overlapping what is it, data. We can call it overlapping data in quantitative, qualitative for the instruments, right? So it depends on how you collect the data, right? So for instance, you take now if you do surveys, yes, no, or agree, disagree, questionnaire, that kind of thing, that can be subsumed under quantitative fairly easily,
yes.
right? Certainly when you measure things, right? Even measurement, there's also the nominal, the interval, and the highest one is ratio, right? Ratio is where you can actually divide using plus, minus, division, and multiplication, right? That will be ratio, right? Or and then the interval, yes, degrees of things, right? So that data can be classified as quantitative, right? Now that's why I'm of the view that sometimes the quantitative qualitative dichotomy is a false dichotomy, because it is not pure in the sense that there is no overlaps. You can't overlap those two. Even qualitative can be quantitative when you start counting. When you start counting, counting the themes, counting, that is can be quantitative. So, for instance, if you want to say, in Donald Trump's speeches, how many times he says the wall, wall, migrants, rapists, right?
Yes.
So you can count how many times.
Yes.
You can count that,
Quantitative.
right? Then so from the qualitative can become quantitative,
Quantitative,
right?
yes.
Right. So you can do that word counting. So you can see, and then you can see what association between the occurrences of two words together, like that. Islam, terrorism,
yes.
Right? So you can see how people associate that. Often associate terrorism, Islam, right? So whenever out of 100 times people mention terrorism, 70% is about Islam. It's connected with Islam. An example. So something that qualitative can be turned into quantitative that way, right? But something quantitative can be turned into qualitative as well. How do you do that? So this is where we look at the combination of method in quantitative and qualitative, and so this is what I'm talking about. I'll be touching on the mixed method, so to say. So if you start with the qualitative and then the quantitative, right? That is called the exploratory research. Explore. If you want to explore,
yes.
You want to explore. What do you think about war? War is good, war is bad, where is Western construction, where militants, where about extremism. You have 50 different words, 50 different concepts connected to war, for instance, right? And so you explore first about war, and then you see, okay, among the 50 concepts, right? I want to focus mainly on 30 concepts, for instance, the most frequently occurring concepts, and then I want to test the hypothesis between these concepts. So we start with qualitative, and then we go with quantitative. You have hypothesis testing, we see correlations and all that. So whenever you have data that can be quantified and tested, right, that will be quantitative, right? So we can start with qualitative and then we go to quantitative. So exploratory. To explore, and then you can eventually develop certain theories at the end, or tentative theories or hypotheses. But certain conventions, certain fields say no. Theory is for high levels of abstraction, right? So you got to look at different conventions, different subjects. So some subjects say theory is not our level, theory is high level. So we don't do theory construction, right? But if you do quantitative and then qualitative, right? Quantitative first and then qualitative, that's called explanatory. So we have quantitative, we say companies that have more ethnic integration tend to be more globalized. So you test it out, right? You see, you come up with 50 companies and see how many companies have ethnic diversity, and then you see how many companies have global linkages, forward, backward linkages, meaning the supply chain, you know, the what raw materials that they get, what do they export, where do they export in the country. So you can say, oh, there's a connection between ethnic diversity and degree of the globalization, right? Okay, but then why is there such connection? So you want to explain the why.
Explain.
You go to qualitative.
Qualitative.
So you have quantitative and then qualitative.
Okay.
So it becomes explanatory.
Yes.
To explain the what, right?
Right.
Right. When you explain the what, it becomes explanatory. So the quantitative followed by qualitative. So we see it could be from document analysis. Then we talk about data collection, because I just collect documents from the companies. Oh, see, I can look at company profile. I see, oh, the ethnic composition is like this, and then I look at the company. I see, oh, this company has export to this country, and they get the materials from this country, so they are more connected. So these are all document analysis, right? So that's how I collect my data, right? And for me to understand why, I go and interview the managers and the executives and the owners and the board of directors. So that is qualitative, right? And eventually it becomes an explanation, a model, a theory, right? By the way, that is my PhD. So so that sequence is to explanatory research. It's combination of quantitative, qualitative. So you can combine, but you don't need to combine all the time, right? In fact, in many cases, not combining is safer for PhD, not for research, right? For PhD and masters, right? Because you don't open the door for too many questions, right? So as a supervisor, my advice is different. As a researcher in a field, my advice will be different, right? So it depends on the research and the research questions, of course, right?
Right.
So
the quantitative research now related in a survey, questionnaire, digital data,
document analysis,
and otherwise.
But document analysis could be qualitative too.
Yes.
You see, I mean, depends on what you want to extract from it.
Right.
That's why I said certain in the instrument can lead to this and that too. So the dichotomy is not a very clear dichotomy.
Yes. Otherwise, interview or observation or text analysis, all this is qualitative. Quantitative. Qualitative.
Yes. Because interview will get unless you ask, the interview question is asking, how many times you do this? How many times?
Yes, it's very close.
It's very close.
Yes, very close.
Depending
so
on,
I return to my question. If I about the objective research strategy, we said we should go to social actors until we can explain the social structure. How can they ask them? By interview, by questionnaire, by observation? How can?
Okay.
Yes, because it's related to the data collection.
All right, related data collection. In fact, we also need to understand that qualitative research is not limited to adaptive research. In fact, all four can have and may have and probably have qualitative research as well, right? Now, adaptive research definitely rely a lot on the qualitative part, right? How do we ask and what do we ask, right? Certainly interviews will be one, right? And that's a big one, right? It's a very big one for adaptive research because you want to understand from them, right? Arguably, observation is another one, but observation must be followed by interviews. Otherwise, if observation without interviews, you become inductive. Because you are doing the observation, right?
Right.
The researcher is doing observation, right?
Yes.
So you are constructing, you are collecting the data from your eyes.
Yes.
You would think that this data is relevant, that data is not relevant, but maybe for the social actors, you might say, well, you collect what they're doing, but the social actors are looking at the sky, the moon, they're looking at the movement of the sun, or they say, so the moon, the sun, the sky, the wind have relevance to what they're doing, maybe because certain things are done because of certain movement of the the sun, the sky. For us, it's not relevant. For them, it's relevant. We got to go back to them and ask, why do you do this? So observation, yes, but observation must be accompanied with interviews. So then it becomes abductive, right? Without the interviews, it does not become abductive. In this case, if you are studying community, so in a way, it is. If we start with anything with our own data collection first, and then we must follow it with the abductive answers that is coming from them. Then it becomes abductive research.
Right. Professor, the last question: how can the researcher use this as a strategy or that strategy? How can know which prefer strategy to his research?
Well, that's actually probably the most or second most important question. The most important question in the research is, what is your research questions?
Yes.
Once you have the research questions, the second most important question is what research strategy, what research methodology you want to use, right? So if your research question is about constructing a theory, for instance, right? When you want to construct a theory, right? You want to say, what are the themes, what are interpretations of war, by the Ukrainians, for instance, right? Then you have a few options to make decision on, right? You can go with abductive research and go straight to the social actors, Ukrainians. What do you think war and all that? You can even ask, what were your thoughts about war before, and what's your thought about war now, right? Because what's happening to them is just within 1 week or 2 weeks, their life get transformed, changed, gone upside down because of the war, right? So that's one way, right? So if that's what you want, or you can say, you want to see what is the interpretation of Ukrainians of interpretation of war by Ukrainians, but you want based on that is reflected in their social media.
Mm-hmm.
So in that sense, you do not have to go and ask them. You can look at the social media and analyze social media, right? So it's no longer abductive in that sense. It becomes inductive. Inductive, yes. Right? So you are still collecting data.
Collect data,
collect data, and then
yes.
you construct the themes and the typologies of explanation of different interpretation of war. But that is inductive, right? Or you say there are three usually in a war, and especially for the legislative body, they talk about two types of legislatures, right? Two types of politicians: the hawkish and the doves, right? Dovish, right? Hawkish are people who want to fight, Russia fight, we fight back, go full swing, the doves say no, you got to give peace a chance, right? So that's a two typology of war mindset, right? So we have a theory about war mindset. That is a deductive. So you want to see, are they more towards the peace loving? Are they more towards war, right? So the Iranian thing, the Iranian nuclear talks, right?
Yes.
There's a Senator Cheney, the daughter, if I'm not mistaken, of Dick Cheney. The woman, she's hawkish. She says we should not talk to Iran about nuclear war right now. But she's a Republican. But there's a Democrat said, well, this is the time to talk to Iranian about,
yes.
because we must talk about the nuclear war. And also, there's two types of thinking. So
two vision, yes.
Two visions. So we can do a deductive. You see, or Ukrainians tend to be this type or that type.
This type, yes. Right? We can test them.
Right? Or you'd be interesting to say, I want to study, pre and post So we can see, we can group them, you know. There's the Ukrainians who are hawkish pre and post, or they are peace-loving pre and then become warriors post, you know. And then you can come up with typologies of that as well. So that's deductive, right? But the retroductive will say, okay, why did they become, you know, warriors and start, you know, the women are willing to fight, they want to find the explanation of why that is the situation right now. Why do they want to go to war? Why are they willing to die? Why, that is the explanation.
So the researcher, he used any strategy depend on his questions.
Depend on research question.
Research question.
All research is about answering research questions.
Yes.
Yeah, and then choosing the right, like you asked us now, choosing the right research methodology.